Greetings and salutations, JordanXlord here, Lord Commander of the Imperial Cultural Society's mission on Earth. Today's agenda for the Imperial Cultural Society is a continued study of the popular earthen tabletop role-playing game, Pathfinder 2nd Edition. While our last lecture was dedicated to versatile heritages, today we are going to focus on the wonderful mechanic known as the Archetypes system, and comparing it to the multi-class feature from an even more popular earthen game known as Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. Now, I will state in this briefing that we here at the ICS do acknowledge that both systems have pros and cons, so we ask our listeners to please be courteous of the players of both systems. We are here to have fun, and I personally enjoy both Pathfinder and D&D. This message has been approved by the Imperial Cultural Society, illuminating the minds of our greatest generations and inspiring a more peaceful multiverse. In discussion of today's topic, we will need to turn to page 219 of the core rulebook. Here I will detail the exact rules for the Archetype system. Pathfinder 2e is a feat-based game. With every odd level you get to choose a feat specific to your class. But with the Archetype system, you can choose to replace any said class feat with an archetype feat that is tied to your archetype. However, first of all, you're going to need to take the dedication feat for that archetype. Now, once you have chosen the dedication feat, you will need to take at least 2 feats in that archetype before you can take another dedication feat. So unfortunately, at 6th level, you cannot be a wizard with the Viking, Pirate, and Martial Artist archetypes, no matter how much wizard feats suck. There are 3 main categories to archetypes. Well, at least the ones we're going to focus on today. The first of which is going to be multi-class archetypes. These are archetypes that are associated with the 22 classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, 12 of which are under core classes that you can find in your core rulebook. However, there's 2 more in Secrets of Magic in the form of the Summoner and the Magus. There are 2 in Guns and Gears in the form of the Inventor and Gunslinger, and 2 more that were just released in the Dark Archive in the form of the Thaumaturge and the Psychic. These grant partial abilities and access to class feats. So, for example, if you wanted to play a fighter with the Wizard archetype, you are still mostly a fighter, but you also gain a limited form of spellcasting. Or if you are a champion with the Cleric archetype, you can just choose to be Religion, the character! With the fighter-wizard example we just gave, I'm going to use it to discuss the spellcasting archetype. You see, when you branch out of fighter to take wizard archetype feats, you are not as potent as a full wizard, but you do get access to the spellcasting feats, as listed below. When you grow in power as a fighter, you can take an additional spell of a higher level, reaching the point to when you are at level 20, you can cast 1 8th level spell if you really put the feats into it, which I think is absolutely awesome. Next up, we're going to be discussing the class archetypes, which despite having a very similar name, is not the same as the multi-class archetype. These work very similar to multi-class archetypes. However, they're not tied down by the existing classes in the game. So here's what I would classify as effectively archetypes that allow you to delve into a niche, a particular fighting style, membership in a faction, or like a specific mechanic and just countless options. There are a bunch of other archetypes as well, such as the undead archetypes listed in the Book of the Dead, which allows you to become popular undead creatures, such as vampires, ghosts, and liches. But that will have to be a separate video entirely. With the rules set in place, I will now explain why I prefer Pathfinder's archetype system over D&D 5e's multiclassing system. It entirely just comes down to my own personal taste, but with how D&D 5e handles its multiclassing, it would always feel like a balancing act between the various classes that I would just try to delve into. Like, I feel like I am trying two things, but I'm not being good at either of them. I know some people can make amazing builds with multiclassing, but with my own experience in it, it's always just a struggle. Like this, every time I would make a character, say like a wizard with fighter levels, it would always kind of just feel like I am being a subpar wizard and a subpar fighter. Now, there are some classes in 5e that are much better at dealing with those issues. Warlock, for example, is great to multiclass it, but what I really enjoy about the Pathfinder 2e archetype system is the fact that I can feel powerful as a fighter with some wizard dip. I don't like having to sacrifice my power as my main class when I basically want to be a paladin that dips into wizard. I want to be a sorcerer with a little more fighter in them. I don't want to have like this balance between the two, because it's always felt in 5e, with the balance, it just does not work the way I like it to, which I really enjoy how 2e does their archetype system. Like, you make some wonderful, complex, and interesting builds. And if you feel that I am just dog shit at the game, yeah, probably. But hey, I just really like the idea of being a champion with like a dip into cleric spells because I took the cleric archetype, because I just feel that combo would be just fine. I will not apologize for that joke, by the way. Cringe is dead and I killed it. You're welcome. It is buried in my backyard. I will not tell you any more information, but it is gone. I am the slayer of cringe. Alrighty, so with my probably dogshit opinion just out of the way, as well as the rules already discussed, those who can either see into the future, spot patterns, or are seeing in my videos the chapters, which are the best feature that YouTube has added in a while, then you know what's going to happen here. Here we're going to make some characters with the archetype system that you can either put in your game as an NPC or inspire your next D&D character. Born in the mountain town of Feltus, the child of the local blacksmith, Aerys had a simple yet happy childhood. Aerys inspired one day to be a knight of the realm, to slay mighty beasts, and to save damsels in towers. Dreams of glory and heroism, only for one day to be witness to a great nightmare, as tragedy would befall the young boy. For the town of Feltus would burn. It all started at the bright of day. Shortly after the clouds of the mountain departed, the townfolk expected to be graced with the light of the sun, only for it to be blocked. Aerys will never forget the day he saw a horror from legends of old, as an ancient red dragon had chosen his town to be the target of its wrath. The sound of thundering wings deafened the screams, and the sight of flames that had left nothing but ash in its wake. Aerys ran for his life. He would survive, not knowing the fate of his parents, as he hid in the darkness of the shelter built under his family's smithy. When the Knights of the Argent Scale finally arrived, it was days later. The red dragon had left, but not without marking the land with its raw elemental power. When they found Aerys, they found him barely breathing, the brink of death. The leader of the knights, a silver dragon in disguise, used her powers to heal and restore the young boy. When the young boy would recover, he would discover that he was heavily changed. The powerful magic of the red dragon had infused itself into his very body. The silver dragon would offer to help train Aerys to control his new sorcerer powers, and to ensure that this would never again happen to anyone. Now, as a full adult and a knight of the Argent Scale, Sir Aerys Scalesworn left to venture in the world to right wrongs and to safeguard the land from those who would seek their destruction. For every good king that wishes to rule wisely and do what they can for their people, there will always be a tyrant that rules through fear and cruelty. Feltus grew up in a time of turmoil. His parents were members of a resistance against a tyrannical lord, had forced them to flee from their homes. Always having to be on the run from the lord's armies, Feltus was taught the art of swordsmanship and had a talent for music that would be fostered by his father, a bard in his own right. While the road had become their home, their family was those who stood beside them, their fellow resistance members known as the Golden Scorpions, doing whatever they could to help the people of every town, every village, within the iron grip of the tyrannical lord. Feltus's muse was the stories of the Golden Scorpions and those they save. He and his father would spread hope and spark the flames of rebellion everywhere they went. During this time, Feltus grew to find love in an elven man by the name of Velderan, an aspiring wizard with a calm yet dry wit. The two had met shortly after the elf was freed from captivity by one of the Lord's men. During that time, the Golden Scorpions had grown more and more bold, and their numbers swelled, reaching to a point where they began to plot the storming of the Lord's castle. Feltus was invited by the leader of the Golden Scorpions and his own parents to help with the preparations. Feltus graciously accepted, and with his training as both a bard and a leader of men, was ready for the assignment. Only for at the dead of night, the Lord's armies had prepared an ambush for the rebels' campsite. Fighting had broke loose, the commotion had reached the command tent, as suddenly burning through a ball of flame conjured into the tent, sent everyone flying. Feltus was thrown the furthest from the tent, knocked off his feet, and launched across the ground. The last thing he saw was Velderan finishing the motion of an evocation spell. And with a sad look in Velderan's eyes, the look of betrayal, that is all Feltus saw before darkness took him. When he finally awoke, the entire camp was destroyed. The bodies of all of his comrades littered the campsite, but he could not find the leader of the Golden Scorpions, his parents, or Velderan. With a broken heart and the desire to keep his family's story alive, he gathered his supplies in the banner of the rebellion and left to find new allies, a new purpose, a new family, and to one day fight back against the Lord who dare put his family at risk to take the freedoms of those he tried to save and to complete the mission, finally liberating his people from the oppressors.